Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at what I believe to be an extremely underrated update in the Season 15 balance patch, and that is the increased damage on rollout for XL MILTANK. Rollout is a fast move that generates a ton of energy, but does very little damage, so getting increased damage per rollout is quite a nice advantage. I tested out XL MILTANK, paired it up with a Buzzwole and a Registeel, and went 7-3 with the team to get to 2675 elo, and XL MILTANK put in a ton of work for me. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out the buff to XL MILTANK in the Open Ultra League. Hopping to the first match, picking up a tough lead Buzzwole into Cresselia. I'm going to farm up 7 counters, look to switch into the Registeel. Unfortunately, I do not get the Moonblast catch, and my Registeel save switch is punished with a Shadow Machamp. Shadow Machamp is going to deal a ton of damage with Cross Chop, and the unfortunate thing is that Zap Cannon is non-lethal. So Machamp, if they know their matchups, can actually no-shield here and fully commit to the farm down. Opponent is going to fully get the farm down, and that is quite unfortunate for me. I'm going to fully wait the clock here and then send in my Buzzwole. Buzzwole will be able to tank this damage. A debuff Rock Slide is going to do a lot less than a potential Moonblast, so I'm just going to let that land, and now I can go for a lunge into the Cresselia. Lunge is going to hit for super effective damage and lower their attack. I throw one more counter, switch, and get the catch onto MILTANK. XL MILTANK is extremely bulky, able to shake off that Moonblast like it's nothing, and in the back is a Gyarados. Now, unfortunately, I am not running Thunderbolt, so I'm not going to be able to one-shot them here, but I'm just going to have to apply some consistent Body Slam pressure and let these buffed rollouts add up. As you can see, the Gyarados' health is starting to get chipped away by rollout. I'm farming up, going for the Body Slam. Unfortunately, I do lose CMP. Aqua Tail, not going to KO. I will be able to hang on here, and I'm firing off Body Slam number 2. My opponent, thinking about it, they will commit the final shield. They're looking for the farm down, but XL MILTANK is so spammy, able to make it to not one Body Slam, but a second. And as you can see, due to the extra damage we get from rollout now, this Body Slam actually KOs. In comes the Cresselia, and the Cresselia is in a good matchup, but they're down energy and down a shield. So Buzzwole is actually in a pretty okay spot here. I debuff with the lunge, shield the Moonblast. It's going to be a race. Buzzwole makes it to the superpower, and that will be game over. This is resisted damage, but it KOs the Cresselia. And that is a good game. The tough leads continue in the next match. Buzzwole into Charizard. This is an absolutely terrible matchup. Immediate save switch into Registeel. Charizard is going to stay in here since they outpace and go for the Blast Burn. If they're going to stay in, I'm more than willing to commit a shield, because if I can get them to stay in, that will misalign our switch timers, which is honestly pretty good for me. I'm firing off the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon will get a shield and get an attack debuff as well. Registeel can tank a Blast Burn anyway, but after the debuff, even more so. Blast Burn will connect. Opponent is going to send in Shadow Wall Rain. I'm going for the Zap Cannon here. This will not one-shot, but it will get the Wall Rain low. My switch clock is close to up here. Farming with the Registeel, and we switch back into the Buzzwole and catch an Earthquake. Earthquake is going to be resisted onto the Buzzwole. Buzzwole gets the farm down, and now I've saved the Registeel for later with some energy. In comes Charizard. I'm just going to go for the Superpower here. I want to try and limit the amount of free farm they can get. Superpower will connect, and that does some nice damage, as now they are going to be in rollout farm down range for MILTANK. MILTANK looking for the farm down. Charizard has so much energy here. I shield the first. It's the Blast Burn, but the Charizard has another Blast Burn loaded. So unfortunately, that's going to hit for quite a lot of damage. In the back, opponent has Golisopod, and honestly, I'm in a really good spot here. I double resist the Shadow Claws, and I shouldn't be in a range where Liquidation KOs. This is again where the bulk of MILTANK can be extremely helpful, as I'm just going to fire off Body Slam after Body Slam in this matchup. I make it to Body Slam number 3. Opponent seriously going to have to start thinking about shielding. They will commit the shield, and now they're firing off a charge move here. But guess what? Liquidation is not going to cut it. MILTANK hangs on and makes it to another Body Slam. That's going to be taking care of the Golisopod, and that's game over. We see the worst possible lead in the next match, Buzzwole into Shadow Gliscor. Gliscor is a big core breaker to Buzzwole and Registeel, so basically my only hope is just to send in the MILTANK and hope that my opponent decides to stay in. But as you can see, unfortunately, they do not. They send in Virizion. Ice Beam does hit for a lot of damage though, and it looks like with the rollouts, they might be in a range where a second Ice Beam could KO. It looks like it's going to come down to CMP here. MILTANK loses CMP to the Virizion. Can I actually survive this? Sacred Sword, KOs, and I concede the match. We see same leads in the next match, Buzzwole into Shadow Gliscor. I save switch into MILTANK. This time my opponent is staying in, which is honestly what I need them to do. I will commit the shield here in case they full send the Earthquake, which they do. I have a ton of energy. I'm over farming, and now I'm going for the Body Slam bait here, looking for the shield. Opponent will commit the shield. Now I go for the Ice Beam, but my opponent makes a sensational catch, catching the Ice Beam onto Tapu Fini. But my opponent has stayed in that matchup for quite a while. My switch clock is almost up, so I have an opportunity here. I'm going to farm to 100 energy, shield the move from the Tapu Fini, and I'm going to pivot out. I'm going to save all of that energy, so hopefully I can get rid of the Gliscor down the road. And now I send in the Reggie, make it to the Zap Cannon, and Zap Cannon will be getting rid of the Tapu Fini. I try and go for an undercharge. Unfortunately, it is still enough to KO, and back in comes the Shadow Gliscor. Gliscor is firing off the Earthquake here. No shields remaining for the Reggie. That nearly KOs the Reggie. Reggie able to hang on with a sliver of HP and make it to the last second Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon caught onto Golisopod, and now I send in Buzzwole. Buzzwole, I'm basically just using as a damage sponge here, and then I can send in the MILTANK. I snipe with a rollout from the MILTANK, and I just have way too much energy for the Gliscor here. No baits, straight for the Ice Beam. Goodbye, Gliscor, and that's a good game. We finally see a good lead in the next match, Buzzwole into Shadow Snorlax. My opponent is going to save switch into Cresselia, and I'm going to stay in here with the Buzzwole, bank a bunch of energy, switch into Registeel at the last second to catch the charge move. Even at an energy disadvantage, this is just an absolutely commanding matchup for Registeel. Registeel resisting everything Cresselia has while consistently hitting back for neutral. Cresselia going for Moonblast after Moonblast here, but that's perfectly fine. I can look to overfarm slightly and go for the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon is not going to be enough to two-shot, but it will get the Cresselia low. Cresselia firing off yet another charge move, and to add insult to injury, we get the debuff as well. Switch clock is up. Opponent is going to send in the Shadow Snorlax. I am going for the Focus Blast here. It's unlikely they're going to shield, and now I just send in the Buzzwole and look for the counter down. Opponent only making one move. I tank whatever they throw. They actually go for the resistant superpower there. You definitely do want to go for Body Slam in that matchup, and in the back, my opponent has Giratina. And MILTANK is about to absolutely feast on this Giratina in the endgame. In the meantime, my opponent is just going to try and get a bunch of energy versus the Buzzwole, but Buzzwole has such a big energy lead that honestly, the lunges are starting to add up. I'm going for lunge number 3 here. Giratina approaching half HP. Giratina realizes they're going to have to throw at some point. They're firing off a Dragon Claw. That will be lethal. I send in the MILTANK. They send in Cresselia, and I can just bring back in the Registeel. Registeel still an absolute wall to Cresselia, even below half health. They go for the Moonblast. That just does nothing. And they're in a range where Zap Cannon should come pretty close to KOing here. Zap Cannon will be shielded by the Cresselia. We do not see the attack drop this time. They're firing off another Moonblast, but it still is not going to be enough to KO. I only have a raid IV Registeel, so mine isn't even like an extremely optimized trade one, and it's still just incredibly powerful. Zap Cannon will get the final shield, and we see the attack drop. In comes Giratina, and I can send in the MILTANK. They have all the energy in the world, but it's not going to matter. MILTANK double resisting the fast move and just way too tanky here. Giratina firing off another Dragon Claw, but now I can make it to the Ice Beam with the MILTANK. This is going to be taken care of the Giratina. In comes Cresselia. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Great lead again in the next match, Buzzwole into Scrafty. Opponent save switches into Jellicent, and I respond with my Registeel. If I had Thunderbolt on the MILTANK, I could conceivably send in the MILTANK here, but unfortunately, I'm running Ice Beam, so I'm just going to send in the Reggie. Reggie is going to be able to tank the Shadow Ball and fire off the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon into the Jellicent does get the attack drop, which is quite nice. My opponent firing off another charge move, and again, I'm not going to be shielding here. They go for another Shadow Ball. I'm farming up with the Registeel, going for another Zap Cannon, and this will be lethal. Opponent is going to commit a shield, and I get another attack drop. So my opponent is looking to make a play for switch advantage, and honestly, that's not really something I want to let happen. However, I decide to no-shield a Shadow Ball, and this is when everything goes wrong. I thought they were going to surf bait, they didn't, and as you can see, I'm now at a critically low level of HP. I'm not at 1 HP here, so I can shield. I'm very close to the Focus Blast. They make another move, and I'm like, surely this isn't 1 HP. But spoiler alert, it's 1 HP. I get KO'd through the shield, and losing Switch is going to cost me the game. Opponent makes it to Surf versus the MILTANK, but MILTANK has a terrible matchup versus Crafty, so I just have to send in the Buzzwole. They have Tentacruel in the back, and I concede the match. Picking up another positive lead in the next match, Buzzwole into Regirock. Opponent save switches into an XL Pelipper. Oh my goodness, talk about spice. And we're going to respond with our Registeel. Much like in the Great League, in the Ultra League, Registeel makes Pelipper's life absolutely miserable. Pelipper can fire off Weather Ball after Weather Ball in this matchup, but Registeel just stands strong, resisting those wing attacks and tanking Weather Balls for days. Zap Cannon will be shielded. I do not get the attack drop though, and that is a bit uncomfortable. My opponent massively overfarming. I make it to another Zap Cannon here. Zap Cannon will be double shielded, and this time we do get the attack drop, and that will guarantee that I can keep switch advantage here. Pelipper is going to fire off a Weather Ball. Now that I've debuffed them at least one stage, I can tank 2 Weather Balls here, and they're never going to be able to wing attack me down. So they go for Weather Ball number 2. They can force a shield here, but I will be able to make it to the Zap Cannon. Honestly, I'm expecting my opponent to pivot out and save the Pelipper, but they do not. I'm able to make it to the Zap Cannon, and Registeel wins switch advantage and shield advantage. In comes Regirock. Regirock looking for the lock-on down, and they get the perfect farm down. That is a bit scary, because Stone Edge will hit for some heavy neutral damage onto the Buzzwole. Stone Edge fired onto the Buzzwole. Buzzwole continuing to farm. I was expecting a catch, so I went for the overfarm. Opponent doesn't catch. They make it to a Stone Edge, and that's going to force my final shield. In the back is a Shadow Venusaur, and it's MILTANK time. MILTANK farming up. I'm just going for the Ice Beam as soon as I get there. Not worrying about timing. I just need the damage. Ice Beam, big damage onto that Venusaur. Venusaur will need back-to-back Frenzies to KO. Frenzy Plant number 1 and Frenzy Plant number 2 just before I make the Body Slam. This will be lethal, and now I send back in the Buzzwole. Buzzwole not going to be able to counter down, so I'm going to fire off the Lunge. Lunge will be lethal, and I'm 1 short of the Superpower. Superpower into the Regirock. I don't think is quite going to KO. Regirock is very tanky, but 1 counter after will do the trick, and that's game over. Hopping into the final match, picking up a pretty nice lead, Buzzwole into a Purified Alolan Muck. Opponent save switches into Giratina, and it is MILTANK time. MILTANK just absolutely walling the fast moves here, and can tank Dragon Claws for days. They're going for Dragon Claw number 2, and that is perfectly fine. I'm going to be able to tank this no problem. Throw 1 more rollout so I'm optimizing timing, and then go for the Ice Beam. Ice Beam should come pretty close to 2-shotting the Giratina, and it looks like it will with the rollout damage. I'm looking to overfarm here as well. I want to try and leave with some energy so I can potentially threaten the Muck when it comes back in. I'm going for the Ice Beam here. Ice Beam, this should be very close to KOing. Ice Beam onto the Giratina, barely does not KO. In comes Tapu Fini. I'm looking to get some chip damage here with the Body Slam, and then I can send in Registeel. Now they're in a range where a Zap Cannon will be lethal. I'm farming up with the Regi, going for the Zap Cannon, and I can tank multiple moves here. One thing that I really like about this backline is the backline is just extremely bulky. Both Pokemon function extremely well in the Zero Shield, and that oftentimes allows me to save shields for my Glacius Pokemon, which is Buzzwole. They're firing off another charge move. This is not going to be enough to KO, so I can pretty comfortably no shield here, and then go for another Zap Cannon. I'm looking to overfarm, going for the Zap Cannon, but my opponent sends in the Giratina and makes a beautiful CMP sack swap, going for the Shadow Sneak and winning CMP over my Zap Cannon. That's an incredible play by my opponent, and may be what they need to fight back from this terrible team comp. I now have to send in Buzzwole because I lost all that energy on the Registeel, and let's see what Buzzwole can do. The good news is I have both shields, so I can just double shield, lunge once, and commit to the farm down. This way, I'm going to leave with energy to threaten the Muck. They're firing off another charge move. I will commit the shield. It is only going to be the Surf, but I want to preserve HP, and in comes the Alolan Muck, and I'm firing off the Lunge right off the bat. Lunge is going to connect into the Muck. farming up with the Buzzwole, Muck, firing off a charge move here, but Dark Pulse is going to be resisted. So Buzzwole not going to be KO'd here. I'm able to make it to lunge number 2. I'm going to now double debuff their attacks, and then I can send in MILTANK. MILTANK firing off the body slam. This will not be enough to KO, but it will get them deep into the red. This potentially puts them into farm down range for either of my remaining Mons. They have to Dark Pulse here to KO the MILTANK, and they will. And now I'm going to send in the Registeel switch timer coming up. Registeel lock-ons down the Tapu Fini and the Alolan Muck, and we get an incredibly close win as time expires. All in all, I leave feeling extremely impressed with how XL MILTANK performed. The extra damage on rollout did feel like it came in handy in a couple situations, and combining that with the really nice energy generation, it leaves XL MILTANK in a really nice anti-meta role in the Open Ultra League, where if opponents are not prepping for it, which a lot of teams are not, you can end up catching some opponents off guard and get some nice wins. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is absolutely incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.